nothing worth doing in life is without risk, right?
Absolutely.
So it's taken me. So my story is one where because I have anxiety, I'm just kind of opening myself up here. I have anxiety, right? So
I'm right with you there, man.
I was always afraid to take risks. So like I've always had clients be like, so do you do this full time? Like this is when I was doing my video production stuff. Cause like you can see my passion, like on the camera, like as we're talking, right? Like if I have a camera in my hand, I'm happy. Right. Yeah. If I have a mic in my hand and getting good sound, I'm happy. Yeah. You know, if I'm doing still photography, I'm happy. Even if I'm pissed off because I'm not getting what I want, I'm still fucking happy. I'm doing what I love. I'm being creative. You know, like when I make, so I do model shoots, and when I make like a little blurb, I always do like a treatment, like a story of what I want to shoot, and I kind of plan out my shots that way.
Even
because
with the still photography, you do make it like a story.
Absolutely. Okay. So I have the one shoot that I did, the Elvin Queen shoot. We went out and as Sarah and I were like combining these things, I was kind of developing the idea. I didn't really say much to her about it, but it was like I had this whole storyline in my head of like her, you know, discovering a portal and stepping through the portal and just kind of going through that. And then you kind of see it in the images that I did. You know, so like I always have thought I'm a very visual thinker. I'm a 3D spatial visual thinker. It's if you were to kind of classify me. Okay. So I think very visually, and if I generally can envision it, it will come to pass. I will make it happen.
When I left Reunion Island to go live in Madagascar, I sort of, because Madagascar is a really, unfortunately, it's a very poor country. And you can only make a living in certain areas, and certain areas that's kind of more funky, more dodgy, you know, to make it really hard. So I found that making a living as a musician in Madagascar was almost impossible. But I arrived there in 2016 in Madagascar, left Reunion Island 2016. And I sort of knew that it was not happening yet, the video boom that we had around this time. Whereas, like, you know, a lot of YouTubers came about and camera breakdowns and reviews, and, you know, it just sort of came out about that time. Whereas, you know, like we could buy like good cameras, good video cameras for cheap, you know, starting with the GH4, GH5, and then Sony went into the ball game and all these cameras, you know, Fuji later on, Nikons, but it sort of started out around, you know, the Canon 5D Mark II, you know, where we could, you know, with the DSLR, and then Magic Lantern, you can install Magic Lantern on the camera, and then so it sort of all came out, and it wasn't really still happening in Madagascar. So I said, okay, well, I did some music, I did a little bit of photography, a little bit of videography. Why don't I just create my own multimedia production company? And which I did, and I started off like that. Went to see like hotels, a lot of musicians. I did a lot of music videos over there too. A lot of artistic video, like dancing and stuff like that, experimental stuff too. They were really open about like doing, you know, all this stuff in Madagascar. To much my surprise.
Just don't think about what your 9 to 5 is, how old you are. Don't think about what city you come from. Don't stress about, I don't live in Toronto, New York, or LA. Whatever you've got going on in your town, participate. Like if you're doing it, if you're acting in a play, in theater, in a small commercial, a short film, you're already acting. You're already doing what you're passionate about. And the more active you are, you know, you will get opportunities that kind of, you know, make you feel like you're kind of working on your skill set. Like the best advice I can give is to just do it, because it took me a while to do it, but no one can convince you to do it really until you feel that kind of hunger in your belly. You know, you're going to get to a point, you might wait a year, wait 10 years, wait 30 years, but you're going to get to a point where you're like, I'm not happy. And it's because I'm not doing what I love. And so find ways to be involved, reach out to people in your network. There are so many people on my network that do participate in these kind of things on the side that I had no idea about. And I only found out because I opened up to them. Like, you might not know this about me, but I'm really interested in acting, and this is my passion. And you don't know what they do on the side. You don't know who they might know. So, I know it's not easy to scream it out from the rooftop sometimes that you want to be in this kind of industry. A lot of people might have opinions and judgment about it, but just, be part of it. And don't worry if it's a movie or a big commercial or something that, it's not going to be substantial. If you're doing it, then you will, in any capacity, you are an actor.
If I can't tell something simple really well and effectively, I won't be able to break all of the rules and tell something more complex any better, Like, I focus so much on telling these crazy stories and it was always so expensive and I would never be able to make them. And eventually I got to a point where, like, let me just try to make something simple really, really, really well and get really good at that. Because if I do that really well, then someone will be like, oh, I'll give you some money to do something a little bit bigger. And then if you do that really well, and then you just build the ability to just tell a good story and
that's key.
Effectively break rules, like not just break rules because the rules don't apply to you, but use the rules, establish the rules of your world, and then break the rules to a more dramatic effect. Or a more emotional effect. So that's what I would say. Is focus on something simple and focus on telling it really, really well.
My comedies tend to really push the envelope when it comes to what's acceptable. I try not to go too far yet. I want to kind of ease my way into becoming more and more provocative, I guess you could say.
Right.
But already I've gotten some pretty strong reactions to my comedies.
Okay.
It has caused offense to certain people, which is not my intention. But, or is it? But
you're not offending somebody. I mean, maybe you should be offending a few people.
It's comedy is the last bastion of free speech. And if you take it to its roots, the court jesters were making fun of the king and the queen and things like that. And
exactly.
Challenging authority and such things. So, I mean, it's really, I'm just kind of continuing that tradition of basically making fun of anything and anyone and not caring what anyone thinks. But I do have certain boundaries.
Sigourney Weaver is a great actress. She's, I didn't realize she was that tall of a woman, so it was just really intimidating. Like, oh my God.
Yep.
And Comte Fior, well, he's a diva, but he's a funny diva. And I had a scene where I had to work exactly across from him. And while the camera was directly on my face, he was poking faces at me all the time and making stupid, just to make me laugh. So, and then I thought, well, karma's a bitch, and I may just get back at you. And of course, when they did the camera turn, I did exactly the same thing. So to get him to laugh and smile, but being such a professional, he didn't even wink, but he laughed afterwards. So that was kind of fun. And it was my Salinger years, if you want to see it, about a young intern working for Salinger, who's of course the hermit that we know, and that wrote that book that everybody presumably has read in high school. But it was fun. And again, a different vision of a very well-known director that you'd think because of the stars that were there would be, but no, he took it extremely seriously and he downplayed everything so that everybody was included. Everybody had a part. Everybody had something to do, but everybody felt at home. It was easy to work with him.
So I've just wrapped up a project that I'm still trying to help distribute and figure out what are the next steps for it. The production's called Stitches. It was shot in Ottawa, directed by Dina Aswayer, and we had a lot of fun shooting that this year. I think it's a very important message, and I loved the story. So that's something that I'm producing down here. I'm actually just networking and trying to find a team to help me produce down here. Cool. There's been a film festival happening all week down here in Buenos Aires that I've been attending, and shaking hands and meeting people and practicing my filmmaking Spanish has been really, really good over the last week. So I've enjoyed that, and a lot of really amazing, talented filmmakers down here, which is super cool. I wasn't sure if there was going to be a community, if there was going to be a passion for filmmaking, but that was pretty naive of me to think that. Of course there is, from what we talked about at the beginning of this. People love to tell stories, people love to play with cameras. So I'm excited to work on some stuff down here, supporting and producing stories that some Argentinians want to tell. I really hope to maybe even set up a co-production between a team down here in Buenos Aires to a team in Canada, find a story that sort of like ties in, both nations, or something that's just, so poignant that it's global. I've already got a bunch of ideas turning through my mind, and some teams I'd like to approach down here. Cool. So I've got their contact information, but I guess that's what's next.
Well, I mean, there's different reasons why we want to get into film. Everyone has some sort of, ambition or something, and then be honest about it and find out what you want from it. Me, what I wanted from it is to remain a hobby, to really, I love collaboration, but for me, it's not a creative ego thing. It's not an ego thing. I like doing everything. I like, dipping my toe in every single thing, but the collaboration comes with the actors. I like having these incredible emotional moments and being vulnerable and being substantial and having these beautiful performances and connecting with the material, and they lend themselves to it. And it's like we're having a conversation. We're not even acting, we're reacting. It's just these beautiful moments between human beings is what I value and I strive for. But the technical stuff, I just like doing everything. I mean, it's a me thing. Like, if I don't need anyone there, why, I just do small little short films and small features and things like that. So yeah, but I do agree in collaboration, but I'm honest about what I want out of it and what I want to get out of it. And it's not a control thing. It's just, I love all the art mediums that are integrated into filmmaking. I love all of it. I want to do all of it.
This craft, this acting is a job at the end of the day, and it's important to be happy. Like the thing that I see is that us as actors, I feel like we attach ourselves to the field of acting like it defies us, like it defines us as human beings. Like, this thing defines me, it's my identity. Without it, I'm nothing, which is not true. Like, we don't get gigs as often. We get mostly no's than yes. They say it takes about 50 no's before you get a yes. You can play it like a game, like you can note it down. It's like and see the progression. You can see it as in a positive light instead of negative. But I've had my fair share of I was impatient. I cried a lot. Like, recently I cried in front of my family because I wasn't taking care of myself. Like, everything, the dark thoughts in my head and everything like that. It's important to take care of yourself and not be afraid to take a step back if you think you have too much on your plate, if this career is too much for you. And like, the big lessons that I got from it was acting as a job that doesn't define you, but also, if you want to make this a career, you have to dedicate time for it, and you have to have fun with it, and to know specifically what you want out of it.
You were touching on about being an assistant director in Vancouver. What sort of things specifically did you work on, and can you kind of expand a bit more on what the whole experience was like?
I think one of the bigger ones was Supergirl. Like that was we did the crossover episode season 3 with the Flash and Legends of Tomorrow and the Arrow, and because they were all in the city, right? Like they were all you had the studio, our studio, the Supergirl studios out in Langley. Then you had the Flash studio kind of in Vancouver proper. And so it was, everyone was kind of nearby, where when they were scheduling this crossover episode, it was a big, big deal. Mm-hmm. And, I remember we had this big church scene, and I'm the third AD. I'm like the guy at the trailer, getting the cast and bringing them to set and dealing with their sign out, like their paperwork sign out. And, I have to sign in 40 stunt actors and for this big shootout at a church wedding. And I remember having one assistant director there just to knock on doors, that was his whole task, like 20 trailers.
Oh yeah.
From one end to another end, 20 trailers. And I took half and he took the other half. And that was it. That was all we did, was just knock on doors. And so that was like a big, big deal. And
no kidding. So you worked with like Melissa Benoist and Grant Gustin and Stephen Amell and oh wow.
Yeah, all those guys. Yeah, for that big crossover one. Yeah, I remember knocking on Grant Gustin's door, and he popped out. He was in his Flash suit, and he kind of was a smart guy. He knew, like, okay, something's a bit off. Like, how come we're not being called to set yet? Like, we should be ready. And so he kind of had a forward thinking. Like, he kind of knew, like, we should be there already and shooting.
Oh wow!
It was Vincent Valentino who actually connected me with a Bell 5 TV producer who was looking to create French content. And at first I wanted to do something artistic, how to heal through art and, a little bit more like similar to what I've been describing all along in this in this interview. Mm-hmm. But really, he says, oh, we've tried that before. It doesn't really connect with people, So I said, what about mental health? And, Bell 5 has a whole Let's Talk sort of like program that they do in the office space or in the, I think that's what it is. Workspace or workplace. Yeah.
Yeah. They do it a lot on social media too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They're very active that way. I think that they're one of the biggest like donors to mental health, like globally.
Well, they got enough money.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So because this is really close to me and really something I've always worked on in my art, I proposed something along the lines of, what if we did a series about mental health, and every day, every episode's about walking through a day with somebody who's like living with a mental health issue. So it's not about interviewing people. It's not static. It's not about exploiting a person either. We're writing the episode with you. And the series starts with my story. So because I didn't feel it would be authentic if I wasn't willing to put myself out there. And so I thought very few documentary makers put themselves first as like a subject of their own documentary. Mm-hmm. And I thought, why not? Because I really care about this subject. And so if I'm going to take a risk about making this, I'm not going to ask anyone to do something I wouldn't be willing to do myself. And so that's why. And so the first episode's is my story.
Another rather impressive story you have is working on the 1999 documentary, The Spirit of Grey Owl, where you got to work and chum around with the likes of Sir Richard Attenborough and Pierce Brosnan.
I'd known through musical connections the British High Commissioner at the time, and he gave me Attenborough's fax number to his production company. And so I wrote him and said, I'd like to do the documentary and interview you and Brosnan, who had just played his first Bond at the time. So he's in between Bond pictures.
Right, and Richard Attenborough, he was directing the film, and Pierce Brosnan was playing the lead.
That's right. Yes.
Right. What was Richard Attenborough like? Did you chum around with him a little bit?
Yeah, well, he was busy, so
of course he's directing the movie.
We had to wait some hours before there was a lull in the production, and then he was extremely gracious, really, really a very erudite fellow. And of course, he is connected to everybody in British cinema history, going back to David Lean, I would think,
Yeah.
But it was Brosnan that I chummed around with and rode in the back of a Cadillac with him. We just chatted and chatted and chatted for a long time until he was called to set. And then between takes, we'd talk, and then he invited me to Hastings, where they were in England, where they were going to shoot next. And I sort of looked at my bank account and thought, no way. Very, very nice to be invited, but there's no chance to go.
I'm sure our listeners want to hear more about this adventure that you had in Chile. Fill us in more about that, and what was the short documentary that you worked on? Tell us all about that. What's that?
Sure. Yeah, that trip was, I've been planning a South America one for a couple of years, and I wasn't too sure where. I was looking at Peru, and then they had kind of some civil unrest a couple of years ago, so I pushed it back. Right. Ended up going climbing in Wyoming and shooting down there. And then this year, everything just fell into place where I could get a decently priced flight to Chile. So a friend and I, we booked kind of last minute. And yeah, I planned, I had some technical experience. I wanted to get some altitude experience. So I kind of found one that was over 5,000 meters. So it was called Cerro Plomo. It ran in at about 5,400 meters. So it was pretty up there for me. Wow. So it takes about 4 days. So the documentary was largely centered around mountaineering and climbing that peak. And then it also touches on kind of like Chilean surf culture. And I was shooting an ad for a surf retreat down there. So I kind of touched on that. And yeah, but it was mostly a mountaineering flick. It was kind of the deal with it. And it was challenging, but a lot of unique challenges, and definitely learned a lot about myself in terms of climbing and altitude and filming at that height. So yeah, it's definitely something I want to do more of, high altitude, but I've got to learn a lot still. So it's